Welcome to the very latest edition of Mob Talk Sit Down. I'm Dave Schratweiser.
And I'm George Anastasia.
George, quite a surprise this week. A big bombshell here in Philadelphia. Former Scarfo soldier, convicted Scarfo soldier, Philip Narduci, busted by the FBI.
Extortion, big numbers, and just the beginning of something, I think.
All right, George, let's set the stage this early Thursday morning, 7:10. Sun coming up in South Jersey. We're setting the stage here. Sun coming up here in South Philadelphia.
Right here.
In a coordinated raid. The FBI hits Philip Narduci's home and arrests him, and they hit his very popular restaurant here at 18th and Washington in South Philadelphia.
Yeah, this gastropub Chicks has been doing very well. And, you know, this was a guy who basically said he legitimized himself. He was out there working hard. And in retrospect, he was. I mean, and people are saying now, why did he have to get involved in this? It didn't make a lot of sense. We'll see. I mean, all indications are from the indictment. It's he and a guy named James Gallo. It looks to me like the victim was wired up because some of the quotes in the indictment are pretty much verbatim what Gallo said. And that's always a bad indication for these guys. If there's tapes, hard to get out from underneath.
It's like you always say, the tapes don't lie.
You can't cross-examine a tape, and we've said that again and again, and it looks like that's the case here.
Let's give Mr. Narduci his credit here.
Right.
25 years in prison. He came out in 2012. Been working hard, running the restaurant right here, other projects he's involved with. For all intents and purposes, from what you and I saw and other people saw, and people who've been in and out of the restaurant, the guy was busting his butt.
Right.
Busting his butt. Nobody expected this. And people, as you said, are asking, why even do this?
Yeah.
Why would you even do this?
I had a guy say he's wrecked his life. You know, it's one of these things, though. I mean, it's part of what you've always done. Maybe you can't get away from it. And the other explanation, very simply, I mean, and this is from the streets, is a guy was saying, look, he lent a guy money, the guy wasn't paying him, he went to get his money. But, you know, that's extortion. You can't do that.
And these days, you really don't want to do that. I mean, it's that kind of situation. There's electronic surveillance, there's wiretaps, there's people wearing wires. You just got to know if you make repeated comments like that to somebody, they're probably going to go to the FBI.
Yeah, I think that's what happened here. And you know, and another guy said it's over. This kind of stuff is over, and people ought to realize that. One of the ironies in this, and I was told this yesterday by a law enforcement guy, is this didn't start out as an investigation of Narduci.
Interesting backstory. Go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, there were apparently the victim, who's never been identified to this date anyway. The victim was somebody the FBI was interested in for a whole other situation. I think part of a separate organized crime investigation. They went to talk to the guy, and he said, nah, you know, he didn't want to be bothered or whatever. And in passing, he said, I just borrowed some money from Phil Narduci. And the FBI said, you know who this guy is? And he said, yeah, don't worry about it. A couple days later, the FBI gets a call, and he's on the phone, the victim saying he just threatened to kill me. Now they go back and see the guy. Now he's concerned, and apparently now he agrees to wire up. And so he's wearing a wire when James Gallo, the co-defendant in the case, goes to the victim and says, you know who you're dealing with, you got to pay, you know, this is nothing to be fooling around with, he's killed people, yada, yada, yada. You get all of that on tape. And that's, I think, what brought the whole thing to a head, and now they've indicted, and now they're in jail.
All right, let's drill down on those conversations a little bit. There's 3 specific conversations with Mr. Gallo, all of them bad. All of them bad. Now, not Mr. Narduci saying this is Gallo saying this. Let's be clear about that, but walk me through a couple of those conversations.
Yeah, I mean, this is a guy who doesn't want to pay, and he goes and says, you know who you're dealing with. I mean, this, you know, you shouldn't be fooling around. This guy's a serious guy. At one point, I think he alleges he's killed 8 people, you know, and at another point, he goes to him and says, you know, don't play around. You know, you're gonna get to a point where you're gonna be, you know, it may be too late for you to say, you know, you can't say I don't care. You don't care. He's gonna come with a ski mask, and then it's gonna be too late, and the last thing you're gonna say is, oh no. So I mean, these are legitimate threats, and obviously,
don't think he won't come in and strangle you. He won't kill you. You know, I mean, those kind of comments by Gallo again, not by Narduci, are problematic big time.
Yeah, and I mean, they're laid out in the indictment. It's a pretty straightforward indictment. It's not complicated. And they list the amounts of money that were being paid.
You think that's FBI money going back? You can't
I mean,
tell.
I think once the guy wired up, once the guy started to cooperate, it probably was FBI money. But original loan is 20 grand back in January. Either he pays that off or it gets extended. Then the new loan in June, I think, is 115 grand. And at a certain point, he stops paying, and that's when he gets pressured. He tells the FBI, Narduci came to him and said, you know, you could have
like
a problem. It goes like this. And according to the indictment, Narduci threw him across the room, and then another point threw him into a car. So there's threats, violence in the indictment. Now you've got a situation where they start paying, and they detail payments of 600 a week, 600, 600, 600, 500, 600, 600, 600, 1,000, 1,000. You know, if the FBI is tracking all of this,
Well, we were here yesterday, and we were also in South Jersey Thursday this week,
Right.
and they served search warrants, and they left with boxes of evidence.
Yeah.
And if in those boxes is some trail with that money, that either the money, where did the money come from, I guess is the question, and then when he got the money back, where did the money go? If that turns out tied up in one of his businesses or something else, projects that he's working on, there's a forfeiture action filed here. That could lead to bad things for him personally.
Yeah, I mean, that's another thing people are scratching their heads about. Why would he put a legitimate business at risk if in fact that happened? Why do you do this kind of stuff? And you know, at the end of the day, people were saying there really was no need to do this. He didn't have to do this. He's making money legitimately. He's working hard. But you know what? I mean, some of these guys, that's part of what their world is. They can't get away from it.
Yeah, this restaurant got a lot of good press. He got a lot of good press. The place is really good from what I hear. The food is excellent.
Yeah.
Craft beers, all kinds of things in there. A lot of people like to stop in here. It's a great neighborhood spot for folks, the millennials in the neighborhood here, in this area that's being gentrified. Come here, they can walk here, they can Uber here or Lyft here. They like this place. And I bet the model is something he was probably going to replicate somewhere else, maybe once or twice. So things were going downhill with a nice drift.
Yeah, you know, the other thing this does, and this is from talking to guys on the streets who constantly complain the FBI is always harassing us, they won't leave us alone, we can't legitimize ourselves. This kind of thing underscores the FBI's view that these guys never stop doing what they're doing. And that's unfortunate for guys who are out on the streets trying to legitimize themselves. If this is an indication of who you guys are and what you do, we're going to keep coming at you. I think this is, from the FBI perspective, this is who these guys are.
Okay, now there was a detention hearing real quick yesterday, an arraignment, and a 3-day delay on Thursday till Tuesday of next week.
Keep them in over the weekend.
Going to be a detention hearing, probably going to talk about these conversations, the violence, then the conversations. They might play a tape or two, probably not. But once they put that in a document and ask a judge to hold them until trial, that's even more trouble right now.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that creates, his first problem is, can he make bail? And if the government's going to say, look, here's threats of violence, this guy's got a history, you shouldn't let him back on the streets. I mean, that's his first short-term problem. Can he get back out on bail? Yeah. And after that, the case proceeds eventually to trial, and we see where it goes. The other thing is, if they did grab a lot of documents, and that's something else somebody said, I mean, is this the only loan he was making? You've got to wonder about that as well. So we'll see. I mean, everything is alleged. Nothing's been proven. Obviously, you know, he's got his right to his day in court.
Absolutely.
And we'll see how it plays out. But this was not part of the broader investigation we've been talking about. That's coming, it's coming, it's coming.
That's why it's a shocker, I guess.
Yeah, this is a separate kind of out of the blue kind of thing. But it's indicative that the FBI is out there churning and talking to people, and this kind of fell in their lap.
Let's talk about the Merlino crew for a second. There was a lot of phone calls made after this happened on Thursday. Seemed to me, a lot of guys seem to be worried about it, even though it's not in their camp, and it's not one of their guys, and it's not related to them at all. Was there a message also going to that group that if you think we won't come after you for loan sharking and extortion, you're wrong?
Well, I mean, I think what the FBI is saying with this is everything is in play.
On the table.
And yeah, if we can make a case, we're going to make a case. And as I said, we keep hearing about this bigger case that's coming. Is it coming? When's it coming? Who knows? But I think this was an indication that the FBI is out there doing work, talking to people. Yeah. And this kind of fell in their lap.
And they're worried about those 2 murders we mentioned in the last episode. A lot of buzz after that happened. Back and forth kind of situation. We don't know when that's coming. Could be any time. We don't know. Nobody's telling us that.
Could be never. I mean, we've been talking about it for 2 years.
It could be never. You're right.
Yeah, we'll see. But I mean, this is all part of a bigger picture of what's going on. And you know, we're talking about, when we're talking about Phil Narduci, you're talking about the history of the South Philadelphia mob, all the way back to his dad. So there's a lot of history here as well. A lot of people know him. He's age-wise a contemporary of Joey Merlino and those guys, but in terms of where he sits, he's with a different group, absolutely. So this doesn't impact some of those guys, but in a broad sense, I mean, all of this is part and parcel of the same investigation.
All right, let's not let James Gallo off the hook here. He's got a big problem too there. Can you see them stepping to him, trying to get him to cooperate against Narduci? You know,
I don't know much about the guy, but I know
nothing about it.
But every indication from reading that indictment is they got him on tape, saying things that really put him in the middle of this extortion. I don't think there's, if you look at that, you say there's no way he's getting out from underneath this. Yeah. What does he do? We'll see. I mean, that's certainly part of the picture as well. It's I can't overemphasize. It's a very simple, straightforward indictment.
8 pages, 9 pages, bing, bang, boom, it's done.
Yeah.
Right? Exposure here. 8 to 10 years? What are you thinking?
Well, yeah, I mean,
If convicted.
Yeah, if convicted. You mean, the problem for Phil Narduci obviously is his track record. He brings a lot of baggage. He's got that racketeering conviction. He was convicted in addition to that to the murder of Frankie Flowers. That got overturned.
Right.
And on a retrial, he and a bunch of other guys were acquitted. Joe Lugambi being one of them. That was one of the more...
Could any of that come back up, you think, here?
No, I don't think so. I think that's
yeah.
that's by the boards. I mean, I think when we're talking about Phil Narduci, you're talking about what's happened since the time he came out of jail going forward.
Yeah.
I think with some of these other guys on the streets, they're worried about cases that weren't solved and sit out there. So it's two different things, but it's all part, I think, of the same FBI investigation.
He has money. He can afford a good attorney. There's some good attorneys' names that have already been mentioned. We don't know that he picked one yet, but could a good attorney take this apart?
Well, I mean, I think the way you take it apart is you say, look, Gallo's on tape saying this is not my guy.
Yeah.
And, you know, Gallo's doing this, Gallo's doing that. Then it comes back to how good a witness is the victim, because the victim is the one, I think, who puts Phil Narduci in this case.
Yeah.
So that's, I mean, all of these things will play out going forward, but it's not that complicated.
All right, George, we're going to watch how this unfolds. How do you think this goes?
Well, I think, you know, first it's a question of do they make bail? Then it's a question, do you set a trial date and move forward? I think before the end of this year, this ought to be resolved.
Could be sitting there a long time waiting for that to happen, and there's a lot of people watching this on a lot of different sides. Authorities, the local wise guys, people even out of our jurisdiction and the neighborhood, because they love that place.
Yeah, and I think from a law enforcement perspective, this is just the beginning.
All right, we'll see you next time.